Among all the girlfriends Joshua had ever dated, I was the least attractive one, yet I was the only one who made him consider marriage. Everyone envied me. An ordinary girl like me had made a playboy settle down. A notorious womanizer finally give up his wandering ways. But less than half a year after our engagement, he got bored. He went back to his old habits, frequently checking into hotels with young models and celebrities. I didn't hysterically question him anymore or demand to know why. I simply returned the engagement ring and broke up with him. With a stunning, hot beauty in his arms, he joked carelessly with his friends. A woman like Paula, plain as boiled water, who could even bring themselves to touch her. Whoever marries her, I'll call him Grandpa. He still thought I loved him so deeply I couldn't pull myself out. But for an entire month, I never once reached out to him. On a rainy night, he showed up drunkenly in front of my flower shop. Paula, my stomach hurts. The mysterious man in power from the Mang family pulled me, my legs weak from his kiss, into his arms and smiled. Grandpa is right here. Young Master Joshua. Shouldn't you ask first? Chapter 01. When I braved the rain to deliver flowers to Joshua's bar, the bartender told me he was in a private room, comforting a waitress who had been bullied to tears by a customer. Raindrops still clung to the rose petals in my arms. Just as I was about to push the door open, I heard his mocking laugh. Paula, you think she'd really get mad at me? If I kissed another woman right in front of her, her first reaction would probably be to ask if my tongue got tired. Laughter erupted from inside the room. Someone asked, Joshua, half a year ago you treated Paula like the apple of your eye. We couldn't even look at her twice. What? Suddenly woke up now? Leaning against him was a strikingly beautiful girl. Joshua replied casually, unconcerned. After eating too many rich delicacies, sometimes you want plain porridge to change things up. But in the end, porridge is still too bland, no kick to it. Paula's just too bland. Only her face is somewhat decent, looks even younger than a college student. Hearing their frivolous comments about me, Joshua remained indifferent. Young is young, but who wouldn't get sick of it after a while? Besides, she's way too easy to satisfy. I give her something random, and she treasures it like it's priceless. He played with the girl's fingers in his arms and casually labeled me cheap. My fingers tightened and loosened around the doorknob before finally falling away. I turned around, threw the slightly wilted flowers into the trash, and walked out of the bar without looking back. Maybe I had lived too cautiously in the first half of my life. That was why I had been obsessively in love with Joshua. Someone so free-spirited and unruly. For so many years, I was the least attractive among all his girlfriends. My education was ordinary. My looks were ordinary. Even my figure was pitiful. Yet somehow, I was the one who made him want to get married. A Cinderella story come to life. Everyone marveled at how capable I must be. To make a player settle down. To make a wanderer turn back. But I had never used any tricks. I only wanted to trade sincerity for sincerity. I gave my whole heart, and all I got in return was the word cheap. 5 years of love. And this was how it ended. What was there left for me to hold on to? Chapter 02. For the past few days, I hadn't gone back to the apartment. I stayed at my flower shop the whole time. Joshua didn't ask about me even once, until I accidentally came across an entertainment headline. A rising young actress spotted meeting her mysterious boyfriend at a luxury hotel. In the photo, the man was dressed in black, and on his middle finger was a wedding ring identical to mine. That pair of rings had been handmade by Joshua and me during a trip, polished together in a small craft shop. The day we picked them up, he proposed to me. All the vows we once made now turned into blades, cutting me until I was bleeding inside. I stared blankly at the computer screen, only snapping back to reality when my phone chimed with a new order notification. Mary, who was watering plants nearby, leaned over and exclaimed in surprise, "Someone ordered all the roses in our shop? Which rich guy is trying to impress his girl? This is a huge gesture. I wonder how touched that girl must be," she added, her tone tinged with envy. I kept wrapping the roses in silence. Mary didn't know, in that circle, throwing money at a girl was just the bare minimum. Jewelry, bags, luxury goods, whatever you want. They give it to you. You think you're irreplaceable to him, but he's just going through the standard dating routine. And when it comes to the next girl, he might make an even bigger show of it. I had assumed the order came from some wealthy young man like Joshua, Only when I arrived at the delivery address did I realize it was him. The girl, stunningly beautiful, stood among the sea of red roses, her eyes red with emotion. Joshua looked carefree and charming as he personally fastened a sapphire necklace around her neck. From a distance, they looked like a perfect couple, like something out of a fairy tale. Meanwhile, I had rushed over in a hurry. My hair was damp with sweat, and I was still wearing my shop apron, like a background extra you'd see anywhere in a romance drama. Chapter 03. The crowd around them was cheering. A photographer noticed me standing nearby and said impatiently, "Hey, delivery lady. Why are you just standing there? Move aside. Can't you see we're taking photos?" Everyone turned to look at me. Someone exclaimed in surprise, "Paula?" Joshua frowned instantly when he saw me, his voice filled with irritation. "Why are you running around instead of staying at home?" "I'm here to deliver flowers." I took off the ring from my middle finger and handed it to him, saying calmly, "And to return your ring." Seeing the situation, no one dared to speak anymore. "What are you mad about now?" Joshua held the girl's hand, only sparing me a brief glance. "Paula, what I have with other women is just for fun. No one's taking your place as missus of the house." He gently kissed the girl's cheek, then looked back at me with impatience in his eyes. "Luna hasn't said anything. What right do you have to make a scene?" "That's right, sis," the girl said sweetly. "Joshua and I are just playing around. Don't be upset." "I'm not upset." I lifted my gaze to Joshua and said evenly, "Let's break up." Joshua froze for a moment, clearly not expecting it. "What did you say?" I met his eyes, my voice steady. "I said we're breaking up. The engagement is off. From now on, you don't have to hide your relationships anymore." "Paula, are you serious?" He laughed in anger. "Don't come begging me to get back together later when you regret this." "I won't regret it." I placed the ring on the table beside him, didn't look at him again, and turned to leave. Behind me, someone sensed the tension and tried to persuade him. "Joshua, maybe you should go after her. This doesn't look like she's joking." "Go after her? She's not worth it." Joshua's cold, dismissive voice reached my ears. A woman as bland as plain water like Paula, who could even bring themselves to touch her. Without me, she's nothing. If anyone's willing to marry her, I'll call him Grandpa. Chapter 04. I didn't go back to the apartment to pack my things. Those clothes and jewelry were all bought by Joshua. They were never really mine to begin with. Lying in the cramped little room of my flower shop, I let out a self-mocking thought. Maybe a girl like me, someone with not a single standout quality, should have just listened to her parents, found a stable job, and lived a predictable life where you could see the ending at a glance. After wallowing for 2 days, I forced myself to get busy again. As long as I stayed busy, I wouldn't feel restless or let certain words eat away at my confidence. Today's delivery was to a villa district. I held a large bouquet of jasmine and rang the doorbell. The door opened quickly, and I immediately said, "Hello, ma'am, your jasmine flowers have arrived. Please sign for them." Then, a deep and pleasant voice sounded, tinged with confusion. "Ma'am? Is this mess Ellie?" The clustered flowers blocked my view. I tried to tilt my head up, but still couldn't see the person clearly. Suddenly, the bouquet in my hands was taken away. With my view unobstructed, a sharp, composed face appeared before me. "Sorry, there's no mess Ellie here," the man said, his gaze falling gently on me without making me feel uncomfortable in the slightest. Realizing I had probably gone to the wrong address, I quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, sir. I must have the wrong house. I didn't mean to disturb you." Though his features were cold and distant, his eyes held a constant smile, and his voice was gentle. "It's all right. The layout here is indeed confusing. If you're looking for 3501, you'll need to go straight ahead and then turn at the corner." His gaze softened as it landed on the fine beads of sweat on my forehead. "It's quite far. I'll have one of the staff walk you there." Even after walking quite a distance away, I still hadn't fully snapped out of it. The handkerchief in my hand was from a well-known luxury brand, soft and pristine, yet he had casually given it to me to wipe my sweat. He was a true gentleman, charming, and incredibly captivating. I turned my head slightly to look back at the villa, only to see that the man who had just gone inside was now standing in the yard, holding a cup of coffee, watching me leave. When he noticed me looking back, He raised his coffee cup from afar and gave me a faint smile with a slight nod. Heat rushed to my ears. I quickly looked away and continued walking, not daring to turn back again. Chapter 05. As Valentine's Day approached, the flower shop became increasingly busy. That brief, striking encounter in the Villa district gradually faded from my mind. Just as it was almost closing time, a last-minute delivery order came in. It was for a well-known private club. I told Mary to go home while I rode my scooter to deliver the flowers. As I neared the club, my phone rang from inside my bag. It was one of Joshua's female friends. I was fairly close with her. I picked up the call. Her tone was anxious. "Paula, Joshua drank too much and his gastric ulcer flared up. He's in the hospital now. No matter how the doctor tries to persuade him, he refuses to take his medicine. He keeps calling your name. Please come quickly." I knew about Joshua's stomach problems. During all the years we were together, I had been the one taking care of it. When his stomach hurt, he would become extremely irritable. I was the only one who could tolerate his bad temper, coaxing him patiently to take his medicine and rest. But now, we had already broken up. Whether he was in pain or not had nothing to do with me anymore. I parked my scooter and said calmly, "I'm busy. If he wants to wreck himself, let him. There's no need to inform me." I hung up without hesitation. Miriam looked at Joshua lying on the hospital bed, his face full of impatience, and said hesitantly, "Paula seems busy." She hung up after just a few words. Joshua's expression darkened, and he said nothing. No one else dared to speak either. All she ever cares about are those stupid flowers. I'm in pain and she won't even come see me. Joshua kicked over the table in front of him. Glass cups shattered all over the floor with a loud crash. He stood there in the mess for a long time, his face grim. Then, as if something occurred to him, he suddenly laughed. "Paula's just playing hard to get. She's waiting for me to go coax her." He lay back down on the hospital bed, utterly convinced. "Give it 3 days, she'll come back crying, begging to get back together with me." Miriam looked at Joshua's smug expression and couldn't help but wonder if being dumped by Paula had driven him a little insane. Chapter 06. This club was notoriously chaotic. After asking a waiter to deliver the flowers for me, I prepared to leave. As I turned a corner, I was suddenly pulled into a pitch-dark stairwell. A hand covered my mouth, burning hot like fire. His heated breath brushed against my ear, and his voice was restrained and hoarse. "Don't be afraid. It's me." That voice, it sounded so familiar. Before I could think further, the world spun, and I was already pinned against the wall by the man in front of me. Our eyes met. I recognized him instantly, my eyes widening in shock. We had only met once, just a week ago. Clearly, he had recognized me long before this moment. Suddenly, hurried footsteps echoed outside the stairwell, as if someone was searching for something. His jacket was left in the hallway. He must be hiding somewhere around here. "Search carefully. Miss is still waiting." The footsteps grew closer. "Sorry." He murmured those words, and then suddenly sealed my lips with his. Our breaths tangled, lips and tongues colliding. In the narrow stairwell, it felt as if a fire had been ignited, threatening to consume both of us completely. His arms tightened around me, as if he were a beast freed from restraint, reckless and uncontrollable. At that moment, the stairwell door suddenly opened. The blinding light made me instinctively shrink back, only to be pulled firmly back into his arms. The hand at my waist burned with heat. I tried to struggle, but he kissed me even deeper. The person at the door let out a meaningful chuckle before closing it again. Darkness swallowed the space once more, and the muffled voices outside drifted in. "Someone in there?" "No, just a couple fooling around." Chapter 07. The footsteps gradually faded away, and my lips were finally freed. The man slowly loosened his hold on me, his gaze dropping onto my swollen lips, his eyes dark and unreadable. After just a second, he lifted his gaze and stepped back, consciously putting distance between us. "I'm sorry." His voice was still hoarse. I wiped my mouth harshly with my sleeve and snapped angrily. "That's it? Just an apology? This is sexual harassment. It's illegal. You know that." And here I thought he was a gentleman. Seeing him remain silent, my anger surged to its peak. "I'm calling the police. I'm going to." Before I could finish the last word, the tall figure in front of me suddenly collapsed. I was so startled I nearly bit my tongue. Stammering, I said, "Hey, you're the one at fault here. Don't try to play dead and frame me." Leaning against the wall, sitting with his knees bent, the man let out a faint laugh, his eyes half closed. "I'm not trying to frame you. I know I was wrong." His voice grew weaker and weaker until it faded completely. The stairwell fell into silence. He sat there with his head lowered, so still that even his breathing seemed to have disappeared. Gathering my courage, I stepped closer and poked his shoulder lightly with my finger. "Hey, are you okay?" The man, who had seemed lifeless, suddenly raised his hand and grasped my fingertips. The scorching heat from his body traveled through my skin, making my heart pound. "Don't leave me alone." Like a murmur in a dream, the stairwell fell silent once again. I pressed my lips together and slowly pulled my hand free. Chapter 08. The smell of disinfectant in the hospital was overwhelmingly sharp. I couldn't fall asleep, so I sat in a chair, lost in thought. The doctor said he had taken an aphrodisiac, which caused the fever. He even reminded me that while adding excitement between couples was normal, they should still exercise restraint. My face burned red as I stammered, unable to form a complete sentence. The heat on my face hadn't fully faded yet. I looked at the man, whose breathing had already stabilized, feeling puzzled. Wasn't that kind of drug supposed to make people lose control like beasts? In those cliché CEO romance novels, the male lead always gets drugged at the beginning, and the setting is always a hotel. After a one-night stand, the female lead inevitably runs away. So why, in my case, did the setting turn into a hospital? I cupped my face and looked at the man lying on the hospital bed. Sharp features, striking brows, and a jawline as if carved by a blade. A textbook male lead appearance. I lifted my head and unexpectedly caught sight of myself in the mirror. An oval face, a low ponytail, and completely unremarkable features, the kind that would disappear instantly in a crowd. My eyelids drooped. An NPC face. No wonder I could never get the role of the female lead. I buried my face into the hospital blanket and thought silently. If I were just a little prettier, if I were just a little more outstanding, would life be easier? Would I finally meet someone who truly loved me? Chapter 09. Half asleep in the middle of the night, I lifted my head from the blanket. Before my eyes were fully open, I saw several fierce-looking men staring at me curiously. "Ah!" I screamed in fright and turned to run, but my wrist was suddenly caught by a broad hand. The man in the hospital gown curved his eyes into a smile, his voice warm with amusement. "Don't be afraid, they're not bad people." "That's right, little girl, we're not bad people. We're law-abiding citizens." They spoke over one another, their gazes on me growing even more eager. Still shaken, I instinctively moved closer to the hospital bed. I wasn't sure if it was my imagination, but I felt my wrist being lightly brushed. When I turned my head again to look, the hand on my wrist had already loosened and instead extended toward me. His eyes were deep as he looked at me and smiled. "Let's properly introduce ourselves. My name is Morrow." The smile was dazzling. I blankly took his well-defined hand, my voice drifting as if it didn't belong to me. "Hello. I'm Paula." Morrow Mang looked at my dazed expression, the smile on his face deepening. "Am I good-looking?" I nodded instinctively. "Very." The suppressed laughter of the others snapped me back to reality. In an instant, my entire face flushed red. The man beside me had a teasing glint in his eyes, his smile growing even brighter. "Since Mr. Mang is fine now, I'll be leaving first." Flustered, I pulled my gaze away and rushed out of the hospital room with a red face. Chapter 10. Only after walking quite a distance did I finally stop. That was way too embarrassing. Good thing I ran fast. I let out a breath and silently prayed that I would never run into Morrow again. When facing that face of his, I couldn't focus on anything, just wanted to keep staring at him. I sighed inwardly at my own lack of composure and lifted my foot to leave the hospital. But suddenly, a familiar voice sounded behind me. "Paula?" By the window, Joshua stood holding his phone, staring at me in disbelief. It had been a while since I last saw him. He had lost a lot of weight, and the hospital gown hung loosely on him. The first thought that appeared in my mind was, Morrow looked much better in a hospital gown than he did. I gave Joshua a faint glance and ignored him, continuing to walk forward, but he quickly caught up and grabbed my elbow. "Paula, what are you pretending for? Coming to the hospital, wasn't it just to see me? Joshua paused, his tone softening slightly. I know you want to get back together. Fine. I agree. My coming to the hospital has nothing to do with you. I shook off his hand and said word by word. Young Master Joshua, please let go of me. What exactly are you making a fuss about? Joshua, having lost face, darkened again. I've already cut things off with that woman. Isn't that enough for you? He spoke as if granting me a favor. What does that have to do with me? I frowned impatiently. Young Master Joshua, I'll say it again, we've broken up. Your affairs have nothing to do with me anymore. Paula, say that again and see what happens. Joshua's expression turned cold. His grip on my arm tightened more and more. Let go! I winced in pain, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't break free. Chapter 11. Sir, please let go of Our Lady. Just as we were locked in a standoff, several figures suddenly surrounded me. The same men from Morrow's hospital room now stood in front of me, their expressions stern as they shielded me behind them. Joshua didn't take them seriously at all and said disdainfully, "What does it have to do with you if I'm talking to my own girlfriend? We've already broken up." I quickly retorted. Joshua was furious. Paula, come over here right now. There's still a chance for us. The others glanced at him and blocked me completely. Miss, our boss would like you to come with us. I nodded without hesitation. Please lead the way. Paula, Joshua called out to me in a low voice, a warning hidden in his tone. I'll say this one last time, come here. I let out a light laugh. Joshua, I'll say this one last time too. We've broken up. Don't come looking for me again. He laughed in anger. Fine. Paula, you've got guts. I'd like to see who else would want a woman as bland and boring as you once you leave me. His expression darkened, and he said coldly, get lost with them. Chapter 12. It had started raining outside when I was brought to the underground parking lot. Morrow was sitting in the back seat of a Bentley, looking down as he handled work. He had changed into a trench coat and was wearing glasses, making him look even more refined. As if sensing the footsteps, he lifted his gaze toward me, his expression gentle. I adjusted my damp bangs and greeted softly. Mr. Meng, just call me by my name. He got out of the car, placing a hand against the car door in a gentlemanly gesture, smiling as he said, you could be considered half my savior. I wonder if you'd give me the chance to drive my benefactor home. Under his gaze, my face began to heat up again. Thank you, Mr. Meng. The moment I got into the car, his coat, still carrying his body warmth, was gently placed over my legs, covering the lower half of my short skirt. His warmth blended with the lingering heat on the coat, and a faint, pleasant scent lingered at the tip of my nose. For a moment, I felt as though I were being held in his arms. My mind went blank, and even my earlier argument with Joshua faded away. The temperature is dropping. Don't catch a chill. There was a natural kind of care in his tone, never making anyone feel uncomfortable. I forced my sluggish mind to wake up and softly thanked him. The car was quiet. Morrow seemed busy, his eyes never leaving the laptop on his lap. I sensibly stayed silent as well, simply staring at the streaks of rain on the window in a daze. Thankfully, the flower shop arrived soon. The moment the car stopped, Morrow frowned slightly, put down his laptop, and personally held an umbrella to open the door for me. The driver noticed his boss's shoulder getting wet from the rain and turned to grab a towel from the back compartment, but accidentally bumped into the laptop. The screen lit up, revealing a series of recent search queries in the bar. How to talk to a girl you like. What should you do when alone with a girl you're attracted to? What if the girl you like is too quiet? Chapter 13. The rain outside grew heavier. I poured a cup of hot tea for Morrow Meng. Mr. Meng, please warm yourself. He took the cup, thanked me, and his gaze drifted toward the jasmine and tulips growing in the shop. You take very good care of these flowers. Thank you. No gardener dislikes hearing someone praise their flowers. Feeling a little giddy, I cut a few sprigs of jasmine and handed them to him. If you like them, Mr. Meng, please take some with you. When I met his smiling eyes, I suddenly felt shy. I didn't mean anything else. I just thought you might like them. He let out a soft chuckle, reached out to accept the flowers. His voice gentle. Beautiful jasmine, very much like you. Paula, I do like them very much. That night, as I lay in bed, those words echoed in my ears again. I buried my face into the blanket and screamed silently. What did he mean? Was he complimenting me? I bit my nail, thinking it over. Maybe it was just something he said casually. His coat, which he had forgotten to take, still hung on my rack. The handkerchief he had given me on the day we first met lay neatly folded on my dressing table. I thought of his face, refined, charming, gentle in expression, always so polite and considerate. Someone like him was probably just this attentive to everyone. Chapter 14. Early the next morning, the bell hanging on the flower shop door rang brightly. Welcome, how can I help you? Holding a pair of pruning scissors, I turned my head, and when I saw who it was, I exclaimed in surprise, Mr. Meng? Morrow, dressed in a composed black suit, carried himself with the same effortless elegance. Good morning, Paula. I'm here to pick up my coat. Just a moment. I washed my hands and quickly handed him the paper bag containing the coat. I'm sorry, I forgot yesterday. I even made you come all the way here. It's all right. I was planning to come anyway. He smiled at me. In his light brown eyes lingered the soft glow of the morning sun, warm and gentle. The jasmine from yesterday was beautiful. I liked it very much. Would you mind saving one for me every day from now on? Is that okay? I looked at his handsome face and nodded blankly. Yes, that's fine. From that day on, Morrow came to my flower shop every morning to pick up a single jasmine flower. Sometimes he would bring me a cup of coffee. Other times, he would sit in the shop for a while before leaving. Gradually, I became used to waiting for him every morning, but that day, he didn't come. Leaning against the doorframe, I waited from sunrise to nightfall, looking at the carefully selected jasmine branch. A wave of disappointment rose in my heart. It was just one day, why did I feel so upset? We didn't even have any kind of relationship. I let out a sigh and prepared to close the shop. At that moment, my phone suddenly rang. It was Morrow, who I hadn't seen all day. Paula, I suddenly remembered I left a handkerchief with you. I need it urgently. Would you be able to bring it over? Sure, send me the address. I agreed without hesitation, not even thinking it through. It was just a handkerchief. What urgent use could it possibly have? But the hunter had already begun to tighten his net, and I, the prey, had unknowingly stepped right into his trap. Chapter 15. When I arrived at the hotel Morrow mentioned, a group of people was chatting and laughing as they walked out. My wife sent a car to pick me up. I'll head out first. Guys, my wife's calling me too. Later. You single dogs. My girlfriend's hungry. I've got to go home and cook for her. I'm off as well. What are you showing off for? All you henpecked guys, get lost. In an instant, only a few people remained. Morrow stood out among them in his black overcoat. His demeanor relaxed. The cigarette between his fingers glowed faintly as it burned. His tall and well-built figure especially eye-catching. Well then, it's just us left. How about we go have some fun together? The moment those words were spoken, Morrow lifted his eyes toward me. He stubbed out his cigarette, a smile slowly appearing. Sorry, I've got someone picking me up. I'll pass. Damn. Morrow, you've finally fallen for someone. Huh? When did this happen? Didn't even tell us. Where's the future sister-in-law? Following Morrow's gaze, they all turned to look at me, and the chatter abruptly stopped. There was a reason. Everyone there was from the same circle. No one didn't know I was Joshua's ex-girlfriend. I hesitated, wondering if I should explain, but Morrow had already stepped in front of me. Let me introduce you. This is Paula. He smiled at the others. It's too early to call her sister-in-law though, because I haven't won her over yet. With that one sentence, both I and everyone present were completely stunned. Morrow, are you crazy? Joshua's ex-girlfriend, you're really... The man didn't finish his sentence before falling silent under Morrow's calm glance, his face turning pale. The atmosphere cooled instantly. Someone quickly stepped forward to ease the tension. Mickey just got back from vacation and is partying with a group of friends. Why don't we go join the fun? Chapter 16. After getting into the car, Morrow returned to his usual gentle demeanor. Fasten your seatbelt. I was still dazed from what he had just said. I reached for the seatbelt absent-mindedly, fumbling with it for quite a while without managing to pull it over. Is the driver's seatbelt safer? He let out a helpless, low chuckle and leaned closer to me, breathing in the faint fragrance from him. I grew so tense I could barely breathe. I hope what I said today didn't trouble you. He fastened my seatbelt for me, then lifted his eyes and smiled softly. And I hope you can give me a chance, Paula. He was too close. I could almost see the shifting light in his pupils, captivating but not overwhelming. Deep and irresistibly charming. I felt like I was about to lose myself in them. Looking at my flushed face, Morrow's eyes carried a hint of amusement. Did you notice? Flustered, I quickly looked away and stammered. And notice what? He slowly leaned closer to my ear and whispered, from our second meeting onward, I've been trying to seduce you, and I've been looking forward to your response. With a loud boom, my mind went completely blank. At that point, it wasn't just my face, even my whole body felt like it had turned red. Seemingly very satisfied with my reaction, Morrow let out a low laugh, leaned back, and started the car with a smile still on his face. Chapter 17. Morrow's words had completely blown away my ability to think. By the time we arrived, he took my hand and led me inside, and I didn't even react. Mickey, dressed in a white shirt and looking refined, raised his eyebrows in surprise when he saw our joined hands. Paula, Morrow, long time no see. Mickey was Miriam's arranged marriage partner. I knew him, and naturally, he knew me too. I didn't like Mickey at all. On the surface, he appeared respectable, but in private, he was just as much of a player as Joshua. Joshua was openly a jerk, but Mickey, in the eyes of outsiders, was a rare good man, so good that everyone thought Miriam was the one who had married up. Mickey seemed devoted to family. He never stayed out overnight and would proactively report his schedule. But when it came to women who threw themselves at him, he never refused. When I was still with Joshua, I had even personally seen him sleeping with his assistant in Miriam's bed. For people I didn't like, I never bothered to hide my disdain. Morrow seemed to sense my mood. He gently squeezed my fingers in reassurance, ignored Mickey entirely, and led me straight into the private room. Mickey didn't mind. He put away the cigarette he hadn't handed out and turned to entertain the others. The room was full of people, most of them from high society. Some of them I had met before when I was with Joshua. Morrow guided me to sit down and ordered me a warm glass of milk. Nearby, Mickey had a provocatively dressed girl sitting on his lap, her behavior flirtatious. He lazily rested his hand on her waist, smiling as he removed his gold-rimmed glasses and tilted her chin up to kiss her. Everyone acted as if this was completely normal. Mickey, kissing her that fiercely, aren't you afraid Miss Miriam will get mad when she sees your swollen lips? Mickey's hand was still inside the girl's clothes. Hearing that, he lazily lifted his eyes and smiled faintly. Our Miriam has a good temper. She doesn't get jealous. At this moment, no one knew that Miriam was actually a fake heiress. The real daughter of her family had returned and was making a scene, demanding Miriam be kicked out and take her place in the engagement. At a time like this, did Miriam even dare to make a fuss? Chapter 18. Laughter and chatter echoed through the private room. I frowned slightly and lowered my head to take a sip of milk. Don't feel like staying? Then let's go. Morrow placed my hand in the crook of his arm and helped me to my feet. As we passed by that wealthy young lady who had just suffered heartbreak, I happened to overhear a group of men putting down Teresa to comfort her. After being with Joshua for so many years, most people looked down on me to some extent. Only Teresa would occasionally look out for me. I pressed my lips together, gripping Morrow's clothes tightly as I stopped and retorted, "What nonsense are you talking about? Teresa isn't like that at all." But my voice trembled, betraying a hint of timidity. Someone let out a mocking laugh. "Morrow, can't you keep your woman in line? Treating Joshua's leftover like a treasure, honestly. You're just like Chinjinan, born to be played by women." I clenched my fists, about to argue back. But Morrow stepped in front of me. His expression remained calm as he lowered his head and lit a cigarette. Through the drifting smoke, Morrow slowly lifted his eyes and curled his lips into a gentle smile. "You might want to call an ambulance in advance. Have someone prepare it." His tone was so polite that the man froze for a moment. The next second, a beer bottle shattered over his head. Blood streamed down as Morrow, cigarette still between his lips, held the jagged half of the broken bottle and kicked the man to the ground. He slowly ground his foot onto the man's hand, his face still mild. even carrying a faint smile. "Who gave you the nerve to speak disrespectfully about my woman?" I was just wondering if I should hand Morrow another intact bottle when the door of the private room suddenly opened. Teresa walked in, wearing sky-high heels, her arm linked with a man's. Miss Teresa, who never allowed herself to suffer even the slightest grievance, who would dare provoke her? Everyone in the room who had said even a word against her was thoroughly dealt with. Chapter 19. The gathering ended on a sour note. Even after getting into Morrow's car, my mind kept replaying the image of Teresa stepping on those men's faces in her high heels. "Do you like Teresa that much?" Morrow asked, glancing at me while driving. I didn't catch the hint of dissatisfaction in his tone and nodded vigorously. "Don't you think Teresa is beautiful? Like a rose. Like a rose among thorns, passionate and flamboyant. At a red light." Morrow turned to look at me. His eyes reflected the dazzling neon lights and my silhouette as he said evenly, "I don't." The car started moving again. I heard him say, "Roses may be beautiful, but in my eyes, jasmine is even better." I froze, his earlier words echoing in my mind. "A very beautiful jasmine, just like you." His words made me feel light, as if I were walking on clouds. So sweet words really can intoxicate. "Not getting out?" Morrow's amused voice suddenly sounded. Only then did I realize we had already arrived at the flower shop. "And no, thank you, Mr. Meng." I didn't dare look at him and lowered my gaze to open the car door. But my wrist was suddenly caught. "Wait." My face was gently lifted by a slightly cool hand. Morrow's warm, handsome face filled my vision. His gaze slowly lowered as he said softly, "There's an eyelash at the corner of your lips." A tingling sensation brushed against my lips, and I could almost feel his warm breath. He was too close. I was so nervous I didn't know where to place my restless gaze. The atmosphere suddenly shifted, like a spark falling into dry grass, ready to ignite at any moment. Flustered, I tried to glance at the time, but unexpectedly met his deep eyes. A sentence suddenly surfaced in my mind: eye contact is a form of a spiritual kiss. My breathing quickened. I hurriedly tried to lower my head, only for him to lift my chin again, to avoid meeting his eyes. I had no choice but to let my gaze fall on his slightly pressed lips. His fingers gently brushed against my skin, his voice slightly hoarse. "If you keep staring like that, don't you want to try what it feels like to kiss me?" It felt like fireworks exploded in my mind. I sat there in a daze, my eyes still fixed on his soft, dry-looking lips. In the end, I don't even know where I found the courage to grab his tie and kiss him. All I remember is that, as we paused to catch our breath, Morrow lightly kissed my lips and sighed. "Good girl." Chapter 20. News that the head of the Meng family had gotten himself a girlfriend spread through the circle, leaving many secretly astonished. Just what kind of goddess could make Morrow, who had been single for 30 years, fall for her? Joshua had drunk too much again, lazily listening to the gossip around him. "I heard she's 6 years younger than Morrow, really young and delicate. I saw her once, not very tall, and not that pretty, but Morrow treasures her like she's the apple of his eye." He values her that much? Her family must be powerful, right? "She's not from our circle. She owns a flower shop." "What's her name again?" "Paula." As soon as those words were spoken, the man suddenly felt a chill down his spine. Joshua's expression turned sinister. Grabbing the man by the neck, he asked coldly, "What did you say that woman's name was?" The others, who had been too afraid to speak, quickly rushed forward to pull Joshua away. "Joshua, are you trying to strangle him to death? Paula hasn't even known Morrow that long. These people are just talking nonsense. Why are you getting so worked up?" Only then did Joshua react. "So you all knew already?" The others hesitated before saying, "Mickey was the one who told us." Watching the scene unfold, Mickey raised an eyebrow. "I thought Morrow was just playing around at first. Who knew he'd actually give Paula a proper title?" Joshua's eyes turned bloodshot. He released the man who was nearly suffocating and began pacing back and forth, muttering to himself, "Impossible. Paula couldn't fall for someone else. She's just angry with me. I'll go find her. I'm going to find her." Joshua rushed out the door without hesitation, charging straight into the rain. Has Joshua gone crazy? Someone who understood the situation shook their head helplessly. He finally realized what he lost. Too bad, it's too late. Chapter 21. It suddenly started raining at dusk today. Morrow seemed to have anticipated it and came to the flower shop early to help me move the flowers. By the time we finished, both our clothes were nearly soaked through. A rainy night, a quiet street, dim yellow lights, and a couple deeply in love. Morrow cupped my face and naturally leaned down to kiss me. Through our rain-soaked clothes, our bodies pressed close, gradually heating up. But Morrow suddenly pulled away, burying his head in the crook of my neck as he caught his breath. "What's wrong?" I was still dazed from the kiss and couldn't react immediately. He gently grazed the skin at my neck with his teeth, his voice hoarse. "Nothing. I'm just a little tired." The man in front of me had strong, steady arms. Feeling the faint sting at my neck, I suddenly remembered what Teresa had said. "Morrow, he can't." No wonder when he was drugged before, he only had a fever. Even now, at this point, he had no intention of going further. I patted his shoulder and comforted him. "Then take a rest for a bit." He responded softly and placed a light kiss at the corner of my lips. Just as I was about to lean in and kiss him back, the bell on the door suddenly rang crisply. "Paula, my stomach hurts." Joshua stood at the doorway, drenched and disheveled, supporting himself against the frame, his eyes red. Morrow frowned and shielded me behind him, as if he didn't see Morrow at all. Joshua stared only at me and said softly, "Paula, I'm here to take you home." "Joshua, I've said this many times already, we've broken up." My tone carried a hint of impatience. He hunched over, seemingly in severe pain, yet still unwilling to give up. "I don't believe it. You loved me so much. How could you fall for someone else?" "Paula, come home with me. Let's go register our marriage tomorrow, okay?" "Young Master Joshua." Morrow pulled me into his arms and said sharply, "Isn't it a bit inappropriate to register a marriage with your own grandmother? Your grandfather is still here. Shouldn't you at least ask him first?" Remembering the words he had once said to me, Joshua's face turned pale bit by bit. "Paula, I was wrong. I was an asshole before. I know I was wrong now." Holding Morrow's hand, I looked at Joshua's lost and broken expression. I felt nothing anymore. "Joshua, it's too late." The prodigal son wanted to turn back, but I no longer wanted him. Looking at Paula's calm expression, Joshua knew he no longer had any chance. He had been with Paula for too long, so long that he had grown used to seeing her whenever he turned around. So all these years, he had acted recklessly, relying on her love. And now, he had finally worn that love away completely. She truly didn't want him anymore. Chapter 22. After Joshua left and the flower shop door had just been closed, Morrow pressed me against the wall and lowered his head to kiss me again. It was a very gentle kiss, devoid of any desire, more like a soothing comfort. I knew he was feeling sorry for me. When the kiss ended, he rested his forehead against mine and said softly, "Our Paula is loved." My heart, once as still as stagnant water, rippled at his words. My eyes reddened instantly, and tears fell one after another. In the past, no matter how much I was wronged, I could hold back my tears, not because I was strong, but because I knew only those who are loved have the right to cry. Morrow let out a soft sigh and pulled me into his arms as I cried so hard I could barely breathe. Like soothing a child, he gently patted my back again and again. He was too gentle, so much so that it felt unreal, like a dream. Clutching his sleeve, I choked out, "I'm not pretty or outstanding. Why are you so good to me?" Morrow carefully wiped away my tears. Hearing this, he looked up at me and shook his head with a soft smile. "I don't know." An unexpected answer. "Does loving someone need a reason?" He said, "I don't know why I love you, but I do know. I only love you." Chapter 23. By the early hours of the morning, after my emotions had finally settled a little, Morrow prepared to leave. The sky was already turning pale. Letting him go without even offering a glass of water felt a bit too heartless. I tugged at the hem of his clothes by the door and asked tentatively, "Why don't you stay here and rest tonight?" He raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised. "You trust me that much?" Without thinking, I blurted out what was on my mind. "You can't even do anything to me anyway. Who's been ruining my reputation out there?" Morrow stepped closer to me, a half smile on his lips. "I can't? Aren't you?" I pressed back against the wall, with nowhere to retreat. muttering, "Even when you were drugged, you only had a fever. Seems like being too proper has its downsides." He pulled me into his arms and lightly bit the tip of my ear. "Paula, I think it's necessary to correct your impression of me." The small restroom in the flower shop felt suffocatingly cramped, though it was late autumn. The room was unusually warm. I leaned against the door, whimpering softly, "Morrow, I believe you now. I really do." But he only chuckled softly and said, "Paula, too late." Morrow was much taller than me, with just a slight bend. He could kiss me from behind. Our lips met, yet he seemed unsatisfied. Tilting his head, he restrained himself as he bit lightly into my shoulder, as if trying to suppress the urge to completely devour me. Only after leaving his mark on my skin did he finally let go. "Morrow, please." Before I could finish begging, my words shattered completely. The flower shop didn't open at all that day. In the hazy moment just before I lost consciousness, I felt a devout kiss fall upon my forehead. Morrow's hoarse voice whispered by my ear, "My little Jasmine, mine." Chapter 24. Morrow and I didn't invite many people to our wedding. While helping me adjust my veil, Miriam said that Joshua had just come to the wedding venue. "Joshua asked me to give this to you." She took out a ring, the one I had returned to Joshua when we broke up. Why would I want something from the past? I tossed the ring into the trash. "I'm moving forward. Tell him not to do pointless things like this anymore." Miriam smiled with relief. "Loving someone is like tending flowers. Paula, you've changed a lot. Morrow treats you very well." I looked up at myself in the mirror, graceful and composed. The timidity was gone, replaced by confidence and calm. After being together for so long, Morrow felt less like a lover and more like a guide. As someone older, he generously shared his life experience with me, step by step helping me expand my flower shop overseas. The way he loved me was by giving me the strength to leave him if I ever needed to. "Paula, look downstairs." Exclamations rose one after another. I looked down. Morrow, dressed in a white suit, stood there holding the reins of a white horse, smiling up at me. "Paula, I'm here to take you." He had come to take me to marry him. I may not be beautiful or outstanding, but in this moment, I was the center of the world. Without hesitation, I lifted my skirt and ran downstairs, throwing myself into his arms. From now on, no matter how long the road ahead, he would walk it with me.